this is how to sow and grow corn. Now, corn is one of my absolute favorite things to grow. It's loads of fun. Now, you've got sweet corn, which is without doubt one of the best tasting things that you'll have straight out of the garden. And then you've got your starchy corns. And these are often discussed as being kind of just for ornamental purposes, but they are actually edible. And they're one of the most brightly coloured crops that you can grow, coming in every colour of the rainbow. Really, really beautiful. But you can eat them. Now, these corns aren't going to taste good fresh because they're starchy corns. They haven't got that sweetness that sweet corn does have. These are for drying. So you dry them out and then you can grind them for cornmeal, because you don't have to get cornmeal as finely ground as flour, so it's easier to make at home. Or the easiest way to make the most of them is to use them as popcorn. Now, corn is really, really fast growing, so don't be tempted to sow it too early in the season. It will get very big very fast. The other reason to wait and not sow it too soon is because corn doesn't really like having its roots messed around with. So the less root disturbance, the better. That's what we're going for. So ideally, the module tray that you sow it into is the last thing it sits in before you plant it out in the ground. You don't want to be potting it up. It will not thank you for it. So ideally start your corn no more than around a month before the final frost date. That's more than enough time for it to get big enough to plant out and establish. Now, you can sow corn direct into the ground where you want it to grow, but if you have any problem with mice or pigeons or anything like that, it's not really going to work very well. They're really good at finding that corn and digging it back out. I know that I can't sow my corn that way. It has to be started in a module tray. So when you're sowing your corn, you want to get it down nice and deep. So you've got your module tray full of compost, and you take your corn and you're going to push it down around about in between the first and second knuckle, about that deep. Now, corn is really, really good at germinating, so you don't need more than one per module tray. Just one per hole should do it. And any that don't pop up, you can always put another corn down in there just to catch up with the others. And when you've got your corn in there, just cover it up with another little sprinkle of compost and give it a water. Now, because we're sowing this one quite late in the season, you shouldn't need any additional heat to get sweet corn to germinate. Just place it in the greenhouse and that should be more than enough protection for it. So when it comes time to plant your corn plants out into the garden, you want to be looking to plant your corn in blocks. That's basically in a rectangle. And the reason that we do that is so that you've got the best chance of pollination. You want your plants kind of grouped together so that the pollen, which forms at the top of the plant, can fall down onto the silks and you get good pollination within the cobs. Now, the thing to bear in mind with corn is it cross-pollinates really, really easily. And that's particularly a problem if you're growing both sweet corn and starchy corn, because if they cross-pollinate, your sweet corn is not going to be sweet anymore. It's going to taste starchy and bland like the starchy corn is. So if you are growing both, you want to get your corns as far away from each other as possible, the greatest possible distance. The other thing you can do is stagger your sowing. So say sow your sweet corn 2 weeks ahead of your starchy corn. That way they should flower and produce silks at different times. And you know your corn's ready to harvest when those silks have dried out and turned brown. Now, if you want to have a go at growing some of the more interesting sweet corn or starchy corn varieties, check out our range on shegrowsveg.com.